Hello, and welcome to Your Brand Express podcast, the podcast where business owners, authors, coaches get a chance to articulate their processes and how they express their brands. With your hosts, Carl and CJ Aline. Get your favorite cup of coffee or tea and get a notepad and enjoy the ride. All right, everyone, we are with the amazing, the man, Steve Worthy. How's it going? How you doing?
Dude, man, I'm stoked, man. I'm stoked to be here, man. You and your son. I'm watching what you guys have been putting together, and I'm privileged, seriously, honestly, privileged to be here and to connect with you guys and talk about whatever it is that we're going to talk about today with podcasts and everything else.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, man, yeah, I tell you. So just to let you all know, Steve's gonna let you know everything he does. I mean, Steve. You can let the crowd know, our audience know, whatever you do, man. Because what you're doing is great, man. It's good stuff. I've been loving Podcasters Live, and you have Worthy Retail U, and we're gonna talk a little bit about podcasting today because in our audience, people are curious about it. We talk to an audience that they have a hard time with having confidence on camera. They're trying to do video marketing, just trying to get their brands out there, and it's a struggle. There's so many voices out there online right now, and I'm trying to give people a seasoned vibe. And brother, you have a seasoned vibe.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, man. It's tough, with the whole podcasting thing, and I'm glad to see that you guys are helping people with their confidence, because I think that's one of the big things that is missing out there. We can easily say go ahead and get started and go ahead and record, but there has to be some work that you need to do up front, I feel, before you can actually even hit record. So
good point. Good point. Well, Steve, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, like what you do? Like I could say, but I feel like I can't do it justice.
Yeah, man.
I'll say this too. We did meet before in a podcasters group, and that's how I got inspired by Steve. And you were very welcoming and you were very encouraging to me, and that gave me confidence to move forward in what I wanted to do.
Good, man. Good. Well, I appreciate that, man. The check's in the mail. Checks in the mail for that comment, man. No, I'm one of those fortunate guys, and people, if you will, that really found my trifecta honestly a little later in life, because I was really just going after it, and the trifecta for me was leadership, podcasting, and live streaming. The leadership stuff came first from a military perspective, and then 25 plus years in retail. But the podcasting actually started podcasting in 2007. So a buddy of mine, we worked together. We taught classes at our church on how to start a business at our church, and we came together. We're like, dude, we need to figure out how to do something. And we kept getting a lot of questions from husbands, because we're both married at the time, and a lot of husbands were asking us about, like, how do you balance between being a husband and being an entrepreneur? And we honestly didn't know, because we were doing the same thing. But we were like, well, let's start the journey together. And so we started By Husbands for Husbands, which is a complete bite off the name FUBU, for us, by us, back in the day, old school clothing brand. And so completely took that, didn't matter. Jerry and I are both from New York, so we felt okay with utilizing it, and we just started podcasting from 2007 to about 2012, and it was we started making money in our other jobs, and then things happened, and I started back podcasting again around 2017 with The Worthy Podcast, and then I niched down into retail leadership with Steve Worthy, which has been an amazing podcast. We focus in on retail leaders, helping them kind of craft their leadership journey through decoding kind of where they are within that journey first, and then helping them move forward. Podcasters Live came out of that group that, you and I were just talking about a little bit. 4 of us kind of broke off. It was an international group. You were part of that. But then 4 of us kind of broke off. It wasn't anything against a big group. We just connected. And then we were meeting like once or twice a month. I was the only American. Everybody else was from the UK. And almost every visit, almost every like call, I was like, dude, this needs to be a podcast. Like podcasters talking about podcasting. Like people need to know this stuff. I mean, we were sharing rich information with each other back and forth, back and forth. It was just an amazing like experience. And then I fell in love with live streaming probably about 2 years prior to that. And so I went live one day from International Podcast Day. Right after I hit the end button, Podcasters Live was born. I had a logo up and running within 7 days. We had our first show within, I think, 14 days after the launch. And then it's just been growing and growing ever since, where we first started talking to podcasters, helping them understand how to live stream so that they can become more discoverable. But we have since kind of switched gears into helping authors and leaders and experts, help them grow their platform utilizing podcasting and live streaming as well.
I love that,
a lot of stuff there, man. I'm long-winded.
Yes. No, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. And it's a lot of great stuff to unpack too, like I love how I'll be real, dude, I'm following you. I love what you're doing, and I noticed that you have a spectrum of different people following you and chiming in with what you're doing. And you have a great audience and they engage with you and they're learning from you. And I see your passion.
Yeah.
I see your passion with what you're saying. And I was actually even looking at your shorts too, and how even when you do the unboxing of different equipment and your passion behind it. And I know for me, I'm not great at that naturally. Like my background as a choreographer and movement coach, I can draw people out and draw their personalities out to help them to be magnified.
This is your world.
This is my world.
I can't do. That's not my gifting. That's not my gifting.
but what I love about it is the passion of it helps to draw people out. The passion of it helps to give them confidence. You know what I mean? The passion of it helps them to be passionate. That's the thing about it, and one of my mottos, even as a man, right, is when I'm teaching something, I want to show first. And when I show and I can show my passion, people they're going to see my fire and want to follow along. And I can teach as I'm going. You know what I mean?
Dude, 100%. I have often been charged in a loving way of being a podcast purist. Because I firmly believe it's a craft. I don't think it's something that people should take lightly if they're gonna go out here and do it.
Right.
It's almost like an actor, and I don't mean that as a podcaster you're acting. I mean the art of actually telling a story, interviewing people, helping a person understand their where they are within that story that you're talking about or within the problem that you're solving. Like there's an art to that. And I firmly believe that if you do it the right way, and if you're not just passionate about it, but if you work on the craft of podcasting, which a lot of people don't, then that's where the fall off happens. It's like, people are, oh my gosh, I can't get people to listen. I can't get people to listen. Well, when's the last time you actually, did a course in podcasting? And here's the other one, this is the one that really gets me. I just never understood this one. Like, how many podcasts do you listen to? I don't really listen to any podcasts. How can you call yourself a podcaster and you don't listen to any podcasts? It's almost like a doctor, or a chef saying, you know what, I'm a chef, but I don't necessarily like to cook. Like, well, no, like it just doesn't make sense. And so we try to help people understand a little bit more about the craft of podcasting and that there is work involved. And then once they kind of get past that hump, I think they start to buy into the idea that this is something for them, especially if they really have a good idea of something that they want to do.
I love it. And do you find with your teaching them, do you find it easy for them to receive it? Do they receive it well or quickly, or is it a resistance to it?
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold. I think some people that old saying our parents used to say, a hard head makes for a soft, right? And so sometimes they have to go out and fail, a little bit, and they come back with the tail between the legs, like, yeah, okay, maybe I shouldn't have tried that or whatever. And that's okay, because I'm the same way. I'm very hard-headed, opinionated, and I'll do stuff and figure it out first, and then I'll come back and then ask for apology later. So I can understand both sides of it. But I think once we get past, once again, the idea that podcasting it's yours. So here's the first thing. This is like one of the, I keep saying the first thing. There are so many firsts, but to be very honest, like, a podcast this is your baby. Like, nobody can tell you what to do. Like, NBC can't tell you what to do. ABC, YouTube, like, nobody can tell you what to do with your podcast when you upload the audio aspect of it. This is yours. You can pretty much say whatever it is that you want to say. You can talk about whatever topic it is that you want to talk about. And so when they realize that, they're like, oh, man. I say, yeah, you can do all of that stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean people are going to listen, right? So you have to have something. The next part of that is that you actually have to have something that people want to talk about, right? I can't call my buddy Eddie, and we can sit up here on the podcast and we could talk about the Knicks or whatever. And who's going to really want to listen to that, especially if I didn't play ball in the NBA. Now, if I play ball in the NBA, then that's a different story. I have a different perspective on it. But if it's just me, my boy, talking, it's like, okay, you and CJ. I mean, I see the Celtics thing behind. I know you guys are from Boston, so I'm not gonna mess with you. I'm not gonna mess with you guys too much. That's later. That's for down the road. That's for down the road.
Later.
That's for later. That's for later. I know you put that up on purpose. I know you did that on purpose, man. I know you. That's why I wore my New York Giants blue, for you guys.
See you, rivalry.
We'll forgive that, CJ. We'll forgive it.
Yeah,
but no, I think those are some of the things. I forgot the whole question. So go ahead and ask me another one.
Oh, sure. No, I think you hit on the nail, though. It's hard to receive, but it ties in with your passion, though. The passion of it engages, because when I view your content and I see the engagement, people are in it and they're asking questions and they're commenting. You know what I mean? So even if there's resistance with it, right? People are still engaged with it, and with your passion, you're helping to draw people in. It's kind of cool it's cool to be a fly on the wall and see.
Yeah, I think part of that is like, when you are sure and like who you are, you really don't care. Like, I mean, seriously, like, I mean, when you are sure and like, let's talk about retail for a second. And when I do my podcast for retail, I can literally see the person that I'm talking to, that's struggling with the fact that they're 20 years younger than their entire team that they supervise. I can see the person that struggles when their senior vice president comes into the store for a visit and they struggle communicating, the expectations and communicating what's going on, right? I see the person that is struggling. They just took over a new market and they're having trouble, getting the buy-in from their team because you just replaced their beloved leader who pretty much let them get away with whatever they want. So now here you are trying to come in and set expectations. I see all of those people because I was that person. The same thing with podcasting. I see the mistakes that I've made. I see the lackluster episodes that I've done in the past, and really expected people to give me their time, because that's what this is. That's what this is. It's an exchange. Yeah. My content for your time. And so my content needs to be of value to somebody for them to give me their time. And I don't think people understand that aspect. And so that's why I speak with such passion, because, dude, I don't got time to waste. A lot of other people don't have time to waste. So make sure your content is of value so that people want to actually listen to what you have to say.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And I love, and I also love when you talked about, hey, this is your baby, and it, along with this being your baby, which I love that, having a performance background, we had to do whatever people told us to do. We were radios.
Yeah.
Right. But having my own thing is so important. But what you also said too is, make sure your content's on point. Make sure your content is something that people want to hear. That's super, super important. So that definitely resonates, my man.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, they're going to ask a question after this next one, but my next question is, what do you feel like some of the biggest challenges you face with people starting out?
Yeah, I think part of it is they want to talk about everything. That's probably number one. They have 5 or 6 different ideas, and they want to try to merge them into one podcast. And I tell them all the time, you're a master of a whole bunch of, you're a jack of all these trades. You're not a master of anything, right? People want to hear a person talk because they have a measure of mastery to whatever it is that content is, right? That you actually have some experience in it, or that you are trying to learn it and you're taking them along for the journey, and you are answering questions that they will particularly, they may be asking themselves. And so I think that's one, is like, try to figure out. So I'll use myself for an example. So when I started back podcasting again, I had The Worthy Podcast, right? The name isn't great. It's just like, I felt like I have a decent last name. So I just like, I'm going to name it The Worthy Podcast. I was coaching people, and I was talking leadership, and I was coaching people, talking about coaching. And then I was talking about Black leadership. I was like 4 different things. And I was like, this is just ridiculous. And so I ended up getting myself a podcast coach, Charlie Valher, who's over in Australia, and good dude, really good dude. He and I met, and we started talking about my podcast. He listened to all of my content, and he's like, Steve, you got some good content. You just got the wrong audience. And or you just don't know your audience right now. And so he said, well, talk me through your retail career. And so I walked him through all of that stuff. And he said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to come back next week with 13 episodes on retail, right? Whatever it is, just 13 episodes. Just hear me out, do it. And so I begrudgingly did it. And I sat down one night, and stuff just started flowing. Like all the different experiences that I had, all the different situations that I had, the learnings, the failures, the successes. I ended up coming back with 40 different topics on retail leadership. And probably about 4 or 5 of those actually were series. So they could probably be broken down into like 2 or 3 different, additional episodes. So I probably had over 50 different episodes. And it was just like a light bulb went off. And it was just like, this is my thing. I have an expertise at it. I love talking about it. My only thing was that I realized was that I was going to have to build an audience for it, because there's a lot of retail podcasts, but they talk about the industry. There's nothing that really focuses in on the actual retail leader. And so that's what we've been doing the last year and a half. It's just been building that market. And it's been paying out for us. So a lot of times people will have all these different ideas that they want to do. We try to help them focus in. The second thing is they get caught up in the gear. They see Joe Rogan, they see all these other people. I got a decent mic here, sure, some 7B, which is awesome. But I started with a condenser mic that's a Rode into USB that picks up every freaking noise. And so they get caught up in the gear before they get caught up in the content. And so we try to help them refocus in on the content and what their pillars are and what they're actually going to be focusing on. And then we focus in on the gear. So those 3 are the kind of like foundational things that we kind of help people with.
That's powerful. I love that. I love the importance of focusing on it. You've talked to me about that at some point. Focusing on your pillars.
Yeah.
Not sure if you remember that conversation we had,
Yeah,
and
I
that helped
do.
me out.
I do. I do, man. Because pillars are what they are. What they help you with is that they are a filter that you run everything else through, all your content. So if you are you want to talk about technology. Well, let's say you want to talk about old school cars, classic cars, and and that's it. I want to talk about classic cars from Chevys from 1970 all the way back to 1950, whatever. That's all I want to talk about. Those are the three pillars: the Chevy, um, classic cars, and then the year. But you start having all of these topics about, well, I want to talk about the 2022 a Corvette, right? Or the Mercedes-Benz 2022. Like, dude, that's completely outside of what you said you're going to talk about. People are coming because they want to hear about Chevys from 1950 to 1970, right? And that's it. So making sure that you actually have pillars that you can run all of your stuff through, and if it actually meets the criteria, then that's great. If it doesn't, then throw it out. Just send that over to somebody else to do that content.
Makes sense.
Right.
What you got, CJ?
I got a question for you. What
Who's my
advice would you
favorite
say?
basketball player of all time? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you good. You good.
Who's better than Knicks or the Celtics? Oh, I'm
Don't
sorry.
let him
I'm sorry.
coach you.
My
Don't
bad.
let him
That's a
do it. Don't
Celtics
let him
dude,
coach you,
but
CJ.
different. We'll say that for say that for another like sports podcast. Although the Celtics are better, but uh, question I got for you would be just how would someone make an impact on like with their message? I feel like some people might have like a lot of messages to say, like what they love, but like how would you say how would you say basically how would you say like how would you help someone build that message that they're going for, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I'm 100%, man. And I think your message and your podcast are when you do it right, it is nothing but an outcropping of who you are, right? It is a byproduct of who you are as a person. And that's why we focus in on, like, whether it's with retail leadership coaching or podcasting coaching, it's understanding like who you are as a person. Like, really like who you are. Like, what do you like? Like, where are you emotionally? Like, where are you financially? Where are you? I had a guy who wanted to start a podcast, and he was so messed up by the whole George Floyd situation, like mentally, like he couldn't get past that. He was so angry. He was so upset, just like a whole bunch of us were, right? He was just so like, just like I Steve, and I actually had to help him get through that first, because everything else that he wanted to talk about was really going to be sort of tainted because he was working out of a space of anger. And so, honestly, if you can really pull back the layers of who you are, I notice I'm not trying to talk about psychology or anything like that, or be a shrink, but it's really understanding, like, what do you want to stand for? What's your value systems, right? And then if you're able to do that, man, and then apply that to your message, right? If it's like young black leaders, right? In America, we want to help them have a voice, right? Then make sure that you're actually doing that too, that you're actually walking the walk, and that you're not just talking the talk. But that's how you have an impact. Here's why: because this audio and this video thing, people will find you out quickly. People will know if you're a fraud, right? Because they can hear the passion or the lack thereof as you're talking on the audio, or the fact that the next episode you are switching gears. You're talking about something completely arbitrary to what you said you're going to talk about. That means that you're double-minded. Like you're not talking about you're not being who you say you're going to be, right? And I think podcasting, for the most successful ones and those who want their message to be really impactful, they understand who they are and they're consistent with that message.
Yeah, that's deep. I think um I think a lot of people, or like maybe that are in the world, or like in the podcasting world, or just content creation world, like that's something that you gotta like kind of keep in mind, because sometimes you just want to post to keep going in a
Yeah,
way, but it's
yeah,
also a reflection of like what you're going through, or like how you're going through it. And I don't know, I relate to that a lot in a way.
yeah. No, I think because it is like there has to be a measure of vulnerability,
Yeah.
right? To who you are. I ain't talking about you gotta get on there and cry,
Yeah.
or whatever, but there has to be some vulnerability. Like I did an episode and I was talking about with retail leadership, and I was talking about the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, and
Mm.
I spoke in glowing terms about a guy who was a mentor, but then he became a sponsor for me, Jim Hogan, when I was with Target, and like I literally start crying because that's how much he impacted me. I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't have that in my script. I didn't have it in my bullet, in my outline. Start crying, Steve. It was literally out of reverence for what he had done for me in my career. And so as I was sharing stories, I didn't realize I did, but I didn't realize how much it had impacted me, and it just overwhelmed me. And so people in the audience, they started sharing their stuff when somebody impacted them. Da da da
Mm.
da da. It was one of my best live streams ever,
Wow.
but it just came out of a outflow of like who I am and what I see, what I believe, and and you don't have to. A lot of times people think they have to be old. You're a young guy. You don't have to be old to find yourself. No, you have a great mom and dad. And I know they've been teaching you to be the man that you're supposed to be, and you already know who you are, and what you stand for. And so, just if this is for you or for anybody else that's listening, like go ahead and get after it. Don't wait. Don't wait. Don't wait.
Hmm.
I love that. Wow, you don't wait, because it's that's important. I appreciate that too. Of course, I'm appreciate as a dad, because society tells you a lot. You need to do this, and then you'll know this.
Yeah.
But the way society is, that's the way we've been trained. But the way society is now, let me rephrase that. That's the way society is now. Is no, there's a lot of information out there, and you can go out and get it, like you mentioned.
Yes.
You
a
can go out
hundred
and get it.
percent.
So I
100%.
love that. So as a dad, of course, my man's in the room.
Yeah.
We're in the room, and hearing that makes me proud, because it makes me proud. That's where we live. That's where we live today.
Yeah.
Where and when we live today. So I appreciate that.
100%.
So I have a question now.
Yeah.
As far as those struggling, like we in our audience, we have people who are coaches, people who are authors, people who they want to be podcasters. They,
Yeah.
and that some don't know the difference even between live stream and podcast. That's another question I'm asked too, though. But
Yeah. Yeah.
what advice would you give for someone struggling to have confidence on camera? Just like, man, hey, I'm an introvert, or I may not be an introvert, but I just have a hard time being here. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. I'll go right back to knowing who you are, knowing your content, and then
Mm.
practice.
Mm.
Yes, yes, yes. Practice. We're talking about practice, not the game, but practice. Not the game that I know and love. No, I'm gonna go down that whole AI, whole AI train. I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and y'all talking about practice. Anyway, but it is so true. The more you know who you are, the more you know your content, and the more you practice, honestly, the better off you will be. When I first started live streaming, I live stream into a private Facebook group, and I was like, I'm not ready for the world, and so I'm in there, early, like on a Saturday morning, like not thinking anybody's gonna be in the group, and I'm just live streaming. Boom! Next thing you know, like 10, 15 people pop up. Oh my gosh, your lighting is great. This, or what did you think about doing this? I'm like, oh man, I thought I was gonna be able to sneak in here and like, and practice this thing. But you also have to be able to develop thick skin, right? Because the other thing about the camera, excuse me, the live streaming communities, if you get part of a really good one, is that they just want you to be successful, right? They really want you to be successful, because here's the thing: it doesn't matter if we're both talking about classic cars. Once again, just to further that analogy, my voice, not just my voice, but how I speak about classic cars, going to be different. CJ speaks about classic cars, right? And so it's okay to have that variation. And so there are people that will actually help you if you get into the right group. But if you're struggling, part of it is really understanding. Once again, if there's anything you guys are going to take away from this, is that you need to figure out who you really are and what you're messaging to be. Because just like when you give a presentation, right, you are up the night sweating with your PowerPoint, right? It's the same thing. When we are getting up here in front of that camera, the more that you know, the better off you will be, and the more confidence that you'll actually have. And then you just keep practicing, and then just and just start going after it. I know it sounds so easy, but it kind of is if this is something that you really want to do. But a lot of people tip the toe in it, and that's fine. And that's 100% fine. But they tip their toe in it, and then they start dogging it out, whether it's podcasting or live streaming. That just sucks. I don't want to do that stuff anyway. I don't want to do podcasts anyway. Well, okay, fine. That's cool, but don't tip your toe in it, and don't give 100%. Then start trying to dog the medium out just because you couldn't cut it. There are other people out here that really want to do it. I found that a lot too. I found that a lot of people who couldn't cut it start talking stuff about the other person because they want to try to do it. It was like, no. So that's where you have to have a made up mind and put the blinders on. Just because CJ, wasn't successful at it, I can't allow CJ's, his inability to do it impact me, because this is what I want to do. So we have to, once again, I always say this, the more you know yourself, the more you can say no. Because the tendency, if we don't know ourselves, whatever comes across our plate, our table, we'll say yes to. We'll pick it up. Yes, sir, I'll do that one. Oh, I want to do that. Ooh, that looks really good. Oh my gosh, so-and-so CJ's doing that one. I want to do that one because he's doing it. I don't even know what CJ's doing, but I see the CJ's doing it. I just want to do it. But if you know who you are, all that stuff could come across your table now. No, that kind of sounds like me. It kind of looks like me a little bit. And then you can kind of figure out from there. But we have to make sure that we know who we are so we can say no to some of the nonsense that kind of takes place in our lives.
Right. Well, that's a principle for life, my brother. And just
broke it down. I was gonna say, if y'all listening right now, make sure y'all rewind 2 minutes ago and rewatch the whole thing, because that was rich.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Let me tell you something that resonates so deeply. It's interesting. I was at a worship rehearsal with this team, the team that I lead at my church, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things, and we had a meeting the night before, but one of the things was I was saying to them, what was it? Oh man, I was pretty much at the end of the day, I was saying, you know what? It's important for us to give this. We're trying something new out in part of our service, and the challenge with that, trying and testing something new out, we want to prepare as much as possible. Because if you prepare as much as possible, and you know who you are and what you're doing, as us being the instruments, you give more of a better chances, more of a better opportunity for the situation to be successful.
100%. I mean, we see our pastors that are up there, preaching, right? I mean, they're practicing, right? They're reading the word of God. And then, I remember I lived back in Atlanta now, but when I lived here the first time, the church I was going to was a New Year's Eve service. And I remember looking at my pastor, Pastor Dennis. He was up there on the stage. It had to be like 2003, maybe, or something like that. And I just looked, and I was just like, wow, there's a dude that is doing exactly what he's been called to do. Like, have you ever seen that person? Like, you know what I mean? And you just see them, they're speaking, or they're playing ball against the Celtics and smashing the Celtics, and you're like, and
He
you're
did
like,
it again, CJ.
you're like,
Did it again.
you're like, you're like, they're doing they're doing it, but no, seriously, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And there have been times in my life where I have felt that, whether it was live streaming or even doing a podcast, I have felt it where it's like, yo, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. It's like this feeling that just comes over you. And so I spend a lot of time trying to make sure I'm still doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because I want that feeling. I want that surety of like, man, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then other people can see that. It's not so much a look at me type of deal. It's more of an internal, like, this is I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then once again, the byproduct of that is people do start to see you. They do start to see CJ like, ooh, man, CJ's, I feel like he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. There's nothing, I don't think there's another feeling like that in the world, man.
I think because I was hit with the question. It's like internal work. Like, that's so important, because like from the outside, you could put on a character all you want. Like, you could post all you want. You could try to portray that you're this guy, or you know what I mean? But sometimes in the inside, you don't really know what's going on. And that comes from practice, that comes from confidence. I have a personal question, just like, how do you go about like internal work? Because I know that's very important. You know, and just, podcasting, streaming, and anything like that.
Yeah, that's a dope question. That's a dope question, man. Ooh, that's a dope question, and that's one of the best questions I've actually ever been asked. I'm not even BSing. Like, I've ever been asked. I've never been asked that question either, too. So that's awesome, man. And it's initially it's tough, because you are trying to battle over the period of your life. You're trying to battle what society and your family and other people think that you should be, compared to what you know in your heart that you should be. Right. And there's a constant battle that's taking place, within yourself, of like, well, I get the accolades, from this person, this situation, if I act this way, or I'm this way. I'm speaking, this is Steve speaking from my personal experience. But then as I did get older, I realized, was like, man, that is such a facade. That's not who I am. That's not the authentic Steve, right? And then when I start to like stop being that person that was going after the applause or the acclaim, and really focused in on the work and the character of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to stand for, guess what? The applause and the acclaim came. It still came, but it came in a more authentic fashion, because they were now clapping for the real Steve. They were now holding the real Steve in higher acclaim than this facade. They didn't know. They didn't really realize that. I knew internally, because I realized that spiritually I probably wasn't where I was with my walk with God. Two, I was trying to do everything myself, because I'm a New Yorker. I feel like I'm pretty smart. I can figure stuff out very, very quickly. And God's like, well, no, you need to slow the ball down. And well, I don't want to slow the ball down, God. Okay, well, go ahead. You run that fast break by yourself. I got this. And I get the my shot slap back, and God's like, okay, how many times you gonna keep doing this? How many times you gonna keep doing this before you start to like understand? And I'm on your wing. All you gotta do is pass me the ball, and I'll pass it back to you, because you're gonna be open, right? It's just a matter of time and understanding that who you really are is a lot of times not what a lot of people will see, because you are still doing the work kind of behind the closed doors. And honestly, That's where the real work is. And then when you get in front of people, who you are, it just naturally flows. It just naturally flows, man. People start to see and feel something different about you. They start to see you in a different light. They start to provide opportunities for you that you didn't you that probably weren't there. That probably were there before, but man, just because of who you are now, your character, your cadence, and how you carry yourself, man, people can see that stuff. But you have to take the time to do the internal work and to be vulnerable, right? I mean, and you know, since we're all black men here, a lot of black men don't get therapy. I went and got therapy, you know, at a later age of my life, because there were things with stuff that I had to deal with my dad and my mom. Like those things I hadn't dealt with before in my life. I thought I had, but man, when I got in when I got in front of that therapist, man, shoot, I thought I had my stuff together. I was so far from that, and I had to realize that those things that were holding me back was a lot of unforgiveness with people in my life, a lot of tying my self-worth to material things, a lot of relationships that had no meaning, but on the outside they looked like they had meaning. So these are all the variables in my life that I've actually had to do work in to kind of see the person that you see standing before you today, probably over the last probably 5 or 6 years. But man, you asked that question, man. Now you're trying to make me want to cry, man. That get me all vulnerable. I feel like
I'm
I'm
about to
on
cry
Oprah.
too.
I feel like I'm on Oprah.
I asked,
That's a
I
great
asked
question,
this
though.
'cause-
Great question.
thank you. I asked this because like I feel like it's a battle that everybody goes through in life, almost often actually, just of like, sometimes you feel like you want to take it down the court yourself, like you said. I love the reference you made. I think that could stick with a lot of people. Like you feel like you feel like your efforts, the way you can put an effort can really take on what God really wants to take on for you. And I think you said it
Man,
perfectly. Said it perfectly.
if you can accomplish it, then it's not God size. You know, if
Wow.
Woo.
if you can accomplish it in your own strength, and then God's really like, all right, you're good, right? You know, but if it's, what we we learned in grad school, this phrase of big, hairy, audacious goal, BHAGs. But if you have goals and aspirations that are like God sized, you know that one, that they are going to take some time, but two, he's not going to give you the desires of your heart until you give your heart to him, and then you are able to kind of be trusted along the way. There are tiny steps that he wants to make sure that he's going to be able to trust you with these bigger things. And I think for me, I was so quick to use my God-gifted talents of being able to read a room and understand people. I understand people very quickly. I am, I hate to God strike me down right now. I'm sorry, don't say that, but I'm rarely wrong when it comes to people. I am rarely wrong when it comes to like their intent and who they are. I feel blessed to be able to have that gift, but as a younger leader, I use that to my advantage to get me and to position me into positions, not the positions that I didn't deserve, but to position me quicker, because I was able to leapfrog and understand the desires of this person's heart and give it to them. And they saw me in a different light. And whenever those opportunities came up, guess who they thought about first? Steve. And so a lot of times when I got to these positions, I intellectually deserved them, but spiritually, I wasn't equipped to handle the responsibility. And so, guess what? I end up failing several times. So, a lot of times we have these giftings inside that God will give us, and we can use them for good, like superpowers. We could use them for good and for evil. And so, I would say trying to figure out what your gifting is quick at an early age and leverage that for his glory, and then everything else will fall into place.
Love it.
Man, you got me preaching. I'm about to pass a plate.
Preacher.
Communion.
Man, let me tell you something, man. Today's episode is very filling, man. Very filling. And Steve, throughout an episode, I've heard a lot of, the what's the word? The continual theme, and in some ways it's kind of authenticity.
Yeah.
Oh,
Knowing who you are, knowing your core. You went deeper though. I said know your core values. You got that little brick. There's a little brick in the floor. I got to pick the brick up and go deeper. You went deeper than values. And I love that because I'm a fan of being one who knows thyself. Even being in the entertainment industry, I needed to know myself. If not, I was going to be lost in the sauce, man. Quickly.
I can imagine.
And I have other stories in the entertainment industry, but it's so important for us to. And actually, you know what? I'm glad I said it because with the whole online space, there's so much that comes at you so quickly, and it's so easy to lose yourself. So for one example, I'll say this. One example is being in the entertainment industry. I always consider myself not exactly in the entertainment industry, but on the outskirts of the entertainment industry, because I felt like if I consider myself so deep in it, I'd be caught up in the storms and just caught up with so many different things. And I wouldn't in the core sense know who I was and know where I needed to go when it was time to make the shifts and adjustments. You know what I mean?
100%, man. These social media, we have a book coming out. It's called How to Beat Imposter Syndrome. And instead of imposter syndrome, it's imposter syndrome. And
love it.
We talk about external and internal triggers. And one of the external triggers is social media. And the fact of how social media plays a role, one, in sometimes preventing people from actually starting a podcast or a live stream or even content creation, because they get so caught up in the comparison traps, comparing to the Joneses, or this person's website is better than mine, or I love how their Instagram posts are like this, or whatever it is. And and that it's such a insidious trap, because I'll use myself as an example for this again, is that we'll call it studying, meaning that like, I'm gonna look at all these feeds, like, I like that one, or I'll go to YouTube. I'm gonna go to YouTube University. I'm gonna study. You're right. And next thing I know, I'm not creating. Next thing I know, I'm not producing. I'm consuming. And so the issue is that when you get caught up in this consumption mentality, your production value and your production quotient goes down, because you're not doing anything. It's a form of imposter syndrome, because now you're utilizing that as an impetus to not start, to not move forward. Well, I'm studying. I gotta get this right. I gotta get all the gear. Gear acquisition syndrome is another one. People feel like they can't start or they can't move because they don't have the right gear, which is 100% false. And so, helping, once again, if you are looking at social media, there is some value in studying and understanding what people are doing, but you got to watch your time that you spend on there. Because if you're consuming more than you're actually producing, then that's an issue. And I'm saying that because that's exactly the trap that I fell into, was consuming. I like how Diana Gladney does this. I like how Doc Rock does this. Or I like how so-and-so does this. I'm just going to watch. And I'm not consuming. And I got this whole studio here and I'm not doing anything with it. So that's a trap that we have to be careful of as well.
Man.
I saw your studio, by the way. It looks dope.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks,
no,
man.
and I love that. What were you gonna say, CJ?
No, I was just gonna say that's like almost the easiest trap to fall into. There's so many different platforms. Now content's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. It's like you could just pull your phone going right now and get a whole lot of info in 10 seconds. It's like crazy how easy it is to fall in a social media trap nowadays. Whether you're like hesitating to start off because you see someone's doing so perfect, you want to get the perfect stuff, or you're going forward, it literally can like stop you from progression.
Mm-hmm.
By just like, like just getting on TikTok real quick 10 to 20 minutes. Like that it's so real. Like I don't know, that was really dope that you shared that.
20. I like that. I like that. Real quick. That's a style. That's an episode title. Real quick turns into 20 minutes.
Great.
I
That's
love
so
it.
true. That's so true
Love it.
though. You get in there, you start like, oh, this is my favorite person. Oh wow, okay, oh great. Here's the thing with content and what I've realized, especially with we're trying to get this the same like pulling away, if you will, with what we did for retail leadership and focusing in, and we've been able to see tons and tons of traction and get people to email us like retail leaders like, dude, I drive 300 miles a day and I don't and I listen to your podcast like every week. Hey, before I board a plane as a regional person, one of the things I listen to in between, stores is I listen to your podcast, right? To know that it's actually resonating with the exact audience that I wanted to resonate with is dope. It's something that I'm like, okay, now I feel like I felt that way anyway, but the fact that now it's starting to come to the surface. The tendency is that we give up on something before we actually before we start to see the fruits of its labor, because we don't think it's working. Because everybody else and their mama is doing this, so we're gonna do this, and then maybe that will will bear fruit. And it's like, no, man, it's gonna bear fruit in its season. And so that's what we're trying to do. The same thing with Podcasters Live is like hone in on the correct audience and then build, and it's gonna bear its fruit. But I got caught up doing what everybody else was doing a little bit with Podcasters Live, and we were doing it at a really high level, and we're doing it really well. But I realized it's like, dude, that's just not me, man. Like, I want to do something. I want to raise the bar of the conversation. I want to increase the value of the people who are actually listening. So if I have to increase the value, I have to increase the value of the content and also the audience. And so being able to do that is a risk, but it's exactly what we feel like we're supposed to be doing. So that's kind of where we are with that.
Love it.
Love it. Love it. And I love what you said, bearing fruit in its season. That's it right there.
Yeah, man. Because everybody, it's IG success, right? Or IG famous. I have a nephew who lives here in Atlanta, and he's a private chef, right? I love that dude to death. Love that dude to death. He'll do like all these like big parties and stuff like that, and then I'm trying to help him with his business structure, right? Because he'll do all these big things, and then down the line he's 2 weeks later, oh man, I need some money. Like, hold on for a second. Like, you're on IG, like like you're throwing all, and he's successful with that piece of it. But then the flip side of the reality is that I'm trying to help him with of his life. Like, that stuff is that stuff. But the reality side of it is like, are you saving money after you do these gigs? Or are you just going out spending it to keep up with the IG lifestyle that you're trying to do? Right. And so, we have people in our lives that we could probably talk to and help, with that understanding. Like, dude, it's, we got to have balance in our lives, man, and we got to make sure that what it is that we're trying to do has value, and then over time the right audience is going to find it. They're going to find the passion that we have for it, and then hopefully it's going to start to resonate with them, and it's going to change. And this is the I know I talk a lot. This is the one thing that a person's podcast should do, and if it's not doing this, then I dare say there's something wrong with it. Your podcast should move people from where they are to like the next like moving them forward. It could be an inch, 2 inches, or whatever, right? Because the tendency is that we want our content, whatever, once, even when we niche down, we want our content to continue to resonate with everybody. But our content is for a season and for a specific audience, and for a specific audience when they're in that season of their life. Please get that, right? So when I have a retail leader who is going listening to my content, they are a assistant manager, store manager, district manager, regional, senior vice president, right? That's my audience, right? Now, can I provide content for a CEO of a retail organization? 100%, but that's my audience. My audience is moving people through that continuum. And then when they get to the CEO level, then that's where maybe coaching and some other stuff kind of comes into play. And so if your content isn't helping people move or invoke a change or to do something different, I hazard to think if, like, man, I don't know. This is just me. There are a lot of entertaining podcasts that are there for just entertainment's sake, and they're there for people to just like listen to. And I just got off work. I don't want to think before I talk to these kids. I just want people to entertain me, and that's cool. And that's cool, and I get it. But I think if you really want to have something of substance, then you have to think about it in a different way.
I love that. It reminds me, taking them on their journey, assisting them in their journey. That's what we do. I love that. That's right. That's dead on. That's right on. And my brother, preach on, man. I dig it.
Right. Worthy podcast. I think.
Right.
It's
okay.
Not only your last name, but I mean, there's so much like worth that you put in, I guess, just off experience. Like, no one can tell your story better than you can. And I think that's a testament. It's just like so much worth just in this segment we had.
Oh man, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Right on. And so to wrap things up, so for those who are inspiring to become podcasters or be podcasters or continue in their journey, like what would be your final thoughts?
I know this may sound kind of pie in the skies, but there's somebody waiting for you. A lot of times we think that our content is for us, and it's not. Our content is for somebody else. Your story is for somebody else. Your story isn't just for you to tell. It's not for you to just sit there and continuously tell it over and over again. You can, which I've done on several podcasts, but my story and my content is for someone else. It's to help them move forward. I think the tendency is that when we get caught up in your content and the idea of a podcast is that I'm just going to get in here and just talk about myself, or I'm just going to talk about this. You have to realize, for people to want to listen, they have to be invested in not just you, but in the story, and that how is this going to impact me? In retail, one of the things that I would often talk to my leaders about whenever they're about to invoke a change or deliver a really big message, we would talk about what's called WIFM, what's in it for me. So I would often like make sure your message, whenever you're talking and communicating, is what's the impact for this individual? Because if you just blanketly say something, well, we're going to have to drive sales, another 20%. Well, I really don't care about it because I'm making $17 an hour. But if you can say, hey, the more that we drive sales, the higher your bonus is going to be. Now it's a different story. It's a different perspective. How do I get a bigger bonus? What do I need to sell more of to get a bigger bonus? So same thing with your story. Is like, what's in it for them to listen? And if you lead with that, and if you're able to craft a really good story, you're going to actually have people that are going to be listening, and they're going to listen throughout the entirety of your podcast and all your different episodes as well.
Also, Steve, if we wanted to find you online, where can we find you?
Yeah, man. You can find me everywhere, Steve Worthy, but we have a specific kind of landing site website, and it's called asksteveworthy.com. And we have both Worthy Retail U and Podcasters Live on there, because invariably when I'm on a podcast and we're supposed to be talking about podcasting, I talk about leadership. And if I'm on a podcast talking about leadership, we end up talking about podcasting. So we just said forget about it, and just created the one area where everybody can go. If you're interested in learning more about how we can help you as a podcaster or a live streamer, you can go there and then click over to Podcasters Live. If you want help with your leadership journey, you can go and click over to Worthy Retail U. We can help you there as well.
Bam! There you have it. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you would be so kind, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and or if you're listening to any of our platforms, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whichever one, please be so kind to give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed the podcast. And we'll talk to you soon.